Welcome to the Superstar Communicator podcast. My name is Susan Heaton-Wright, a leading impact, speaking and communications expert. My aim is to show you how to make an impact so you will be heard, listened to and respected for career success. Listen weekly to the podcast and go to our website, superstarcommunicator.com. Hi there, this is Susan Heaton-Wright. Thank you very much for tuning in today. We've got a really exciting episode, but before we meet our guest, I wanted to tell you a couple of things and invite you to engage with me in other ways. First of all, I am planning a series of complimentary webinars, just half an hour, on topics such as virtual presentations, sharing some top tips, virtual public speaking, lots of top tips, how to create content that really engages with your audience. As I speak, it's a year since we went into lockdown in the United Kingdom, and virtual communication is here to stay. And I want to be able to share some of my expertise and what I have been sharing with my corporate clients. So if you want to know more about this, and I will put the link in the notes, you need to go to superstarcommunicator.com/webinar-interest. So it's superstarcommunicator.com/webinar-interest. The other thing is that I have created a checklist to become a superstar communicator. And if you want that checklist, again, you just need to register to grab your copy, and it is superstarcommunicator.com/10-top-tips, and you will get all of the information there. I hope this will be of interest to you, because remember that all of the things we talk about are covered in the checklist. So now I want to introduce our next guest. Edward Turnbull contacted me a couple of months ago because he has written a book called Mindful Communication for Happiness. I thought this really tied in well with International Happiness Day, which is on the 20th of March. He's had a background in business, communication and negotiation. He is an experienced meditator who enjoys traveling the world and training as an athlete. His life experiences have led to the belief that we need to work on everything from diet, fitness and mental training to be our best. He has written a book, Mindful Communication for Happiness, which ties in with International Day of Happiness. And I know this is going to be a hugely valuable podcast for you. So don't forget to share it with all of your friends. So we have got International Day of Happiness on the 20th of March, and this is a perfect time to talk to you, Edward, because you have written this incredible book called Mindful Communication for Happiness. So welcome, Edward.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me today.
And why did you decide to write this book?
This book has been something I've been thinking about for quite some time, probably for the past 6 years or so. Just in general, noticing the change in communication in business, in personal life, just in general society around the world. Just seeing sort of some things that problems with communication, roadblocks, and I just feel things were not moving as smoothly as they could. There's something I wanted to address and put out there, and possibly help some people, see into some of their own communication habits in the future.
And do you think that now that we are communicating almost always virtually that has increased the potential problems with communication.
In some ways, I don't know. I think, social media and things of that nature have created some certain habits. They've maybe accentuated some bad ones, but I think in some ways it's helped people too. I think, again, with technology, if it's used in a certain way and is used correctly, it's very beneficial. But I think it's definitely maybe created some bad habits. The time more now, it's a little bit, it's very different. I know most people are, working from home and everything is gone very virtual. But again, I think when you're speaking with somebody through on the phone or through a video, it's not face to face, but still, there's certain aspects of communication that need to be, looked at as important. And it's definitely going to, change the outcome of business calls or personal calls or your goals in life and what you're trying to do. In a sense, I mean, everybody is communicating since they wake up in the morning or even when they're sleeping. You never really stop communicating. You're communicating with other people. You're communicating with your own body. You're communicating with the environment. So I think it's something that's, very, very important to pay attention to. And I think some people are very caught up in their conditioned habits. And it's not so much that they are unaware, it's just they're going along with it. And, people are busy. Maybe they don't have the time to reflect on it, and certain things are maybe not working out as well with relationships, or with, they're constantly having problems in business, or people they're dealing with. There's a lot of conflicts or arguments, and then, a lot of people tend to look out and say, well, it's this person's fault, or it's that person's fault. And I think, one big thing with communication is taking a step back and looking first at your own
Yeah.
communication, and going from there. And this is kind of where the book leads in.
Okay. Now, I don't want to be rude, but I'm not sure how old you are, Edward, but I wonder if there is a generation.
45.
Sorry?
Well, I'm 45. That's
All
my
right. So you're
chronological age.
a little bit you're a little bit younger than me, but I just wonder if there's a difference with the generations. So for millennials who were brought up on digital, if their communication style and what they believe to be okay is different from somebody like myself who is a Generation X.
I mean, I think definitely there's always going to be different habits from generation to generation. I think specifically with the millennial generation, definitely they have been brought up with a digital type of communication. So I think their face to face and their in-person communication is maybe not as deep as some of the older generations. But again, there's always exceptions, and I don't like to put everybody into a box. I mean, I have friends in their 20s, and also, older, my age, and older as well. And I think that good communicators in general, and regardless of their age, have certain habits that carry through. And again, everyone's, going to be influenced by their generation. They're going to
Yeah.
have maybe a bit more of the characteristics from what's going on in that time frame. But I think, and again, where the book comes in is there's certain specifics and certain parts of communication that really are never going to change, no matter what the
No.
generation is, no matter what the technology is. It's just a matter of how to relate to yourself and relate to other people for happiness and also for success. Yeah.
And how about the difference between spoken and written communication? Do you think that they are separate, or do you think that they are one and the same?
Well, I think all communication is the same in the sense that it's communication. I think with written communication, whether that's again, there's different forms of written communication, but I think it's the same. And I think you can take a different. There's different specifics you could use in each form, but it also depends on what you're doing. Are you texting your best friend? Are you texting your boss? Are you texting a potential business relationship? Again, are you dealing with somebody? Are you writing an email to a customer service representative? Are you writing an email to, your girlfriend, perhaps? So I think, or your boyfriend. So I think that, again, and the book does go into more detail in this, but I think it's specific to each situation. But again, there's certain I think there's certain guidelines that should carry through in everything, and where people should definitely be respectful, and they should be clear about not just what they're saying, but where it's coming from. I think on a deeper level,
Yes.
you're not just to get the message across, but am I getting the message across in the best possible way for the situation?
Yes.
Am I taking the other people's feelings into consideration? Am I angry? Am I emotional? Am I coming from a state of uh, frustration? Again, because I think sometimes people like to unload their emotions, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, onto other people.
Yes.
And I've seen it again. I see it sometimes, often more in business than I see it in personal interactions. And I think a lot of the time, people are blind to that, or they've
Yes.
gotten they're conditioned into a habit that it makes them feel better to say, I'm just going to let out my frustration through this email or through this call or through this text. And I think from that perspective, that communication is the same. But again, if you're communicating through a written message or through a verbal, again, it depends on the situation.
And I love the fact that you focus early on the importance of being well in yourself when you communicate. And by well, I mean physically well, or if you're tired, or if you realize that you're frustrated, that you might need to be mindful and take a step back so you don't say or write something that you could regret later.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the time people are tired and they're stressed out, especially now, or just in the last, probably decade even. I think things have just been getting faster and faster. And I think a lot of the time people they have too many things on their mind. They're not clear. And again, it makes it harder to take a step back and be mindful. And I think the foundation is very important. And I know, Susan, that you exercise, and I know you take part in that sort of thing. And I realize that for a lot of people they do, and some people they don't. And I think everyone's at their own level, and that becomes normal for you. So for somebody might be at a, let's just pick a random number. Let's say your health and your wellness is at an 8 out of 10. Well, that feels normal for somebody at an 8. But if somebody's at a 4 constantly, then that 4 feels normal for them. So if
Yes.
the 8 drops down to a 7, they feel, I'm off today. And if the 4 drops down to a 3, they feel they're off today. So I think everyone kind of needs to look at where they're at and start working from there. And I think it's very important to get enough sleep. I do recommend, I talk about it in the book, meditation. That's a whole nother topic, but I think it's something that's very important for calming the mind, calming the body, starting to build some room to have more mindfulness. It does take time. It's not a quick fix. It's not an easy fix. It's something you do have to start doing every day, and it's going to take some work. And same with the health and fitness, and whether that's just taking a half an hour run every day or a nice walk, making sure you're eating some healthy food, just starting slowly. I mean, just making one adjustment or at a time and getting comfortable with it. You don't have to change your whole lifestyle overnight. But I think what happens is when you start to build that foundation, you start to manage your energy better. You start to maybe cut out things you don't always need to do. You have too many friends, you have too many obligations. I think people want to do too much. And I think part of it is saying, look, what are the top 5 or 6 things I really, really want in life? And what do I want to do? What do I want to focus on? And really kind of cutting everything else out that's getting in the way of those, and really focusing in on those. And a big part of one of those would definitely be your health and your wellness. Yeah.
Yes. And I suppose emotional wellness, all areas of wellness.
It ties in together, I think.
Yes.
I think the mind and the body are connected. You need to work on both, but absolutely, it's they're one and the same. If you're not if you're not eating well, if you're not sleeping well, I mean, your mental health is not going to be as good as it could be. There's no question about it.
And I love the fact that you believe that there's a connection between mindfulness and communication. It's not something that certainly I've come across before. I often speak to other communication experts. I myself have my own communication model, Superstar Communicator. But you are the first person that has put a connection between mindfulness and communication.
Right.
The way that I perceive from reading the book is that it is a conscious decision and be consciously aware of different communication situations. Am I on the right line on that?
You're on the right path. And mindfulness, I'm not a huge fan of the word mindful.
Mm,
I know it's become very popular, especially in the last couple of years. So it's something that really what it means is to be aware of what you're doing while you're doing it. So, for example, with communication, while you're communicating, you're aware of how you're communicating, what you're communicating, you're aware of your internal emotions, you're aware of the other person, how they're reacting, their subtle communication. I think really, I mean, I have a background in business and sales, particularly. I've worked Fortune 500 business, intellectual property law. And I also have a background in meditation. I've been doing it for a very
yeah.
long time. And I think those things coming together sort of really gave me a clear insight as to how I've had success with communication and how I could help other people with it and faults I've seen with other people in their communication that's holding them back from their full potential. And we're talking about CEOs in Fortune 500 companies. We're not just talking about somebody that's not aware of their communication, or maybe a younger person that's kind of just conditioned into their generation and their friends and their habits and everything. So really the gamut of communication runs, quite a long way. And I think that a lot of people are not as aware as they could be. And I don't think they realize maybe how it's affecting their life and their
Yeah.
happiness. And I've also noticed that, well, the title of the book and the happiness comes from the fact that I've also noticed a lot with people that are not that happy. I just, some people are, but I've noticed that a lot of people are, they say they are, but you can just tell they're not. And I feel there's something missing. And I think a lot of it does stem from the base in their communication and the way they are dealing with people around them. And a lot of that causes problems, and those problems come back to them, which obviously causes stress, which, is not going to make you super, super happy.
And get moving on from happiness. How can mindful communication, because our listeners haven't read the book yet, and we'll talk about the book in a moment, how people can order it. How can mindful communications help in all relationships? So it could be your family, it could be your partner, it could actually be your colleagues or the team that you lead. How can this help?
Um, well, first of all, I mean, it's looking inwards first to see your own communication habits and starting to work on those. So again, your health, your wellness, your emotions, where things, when you're getting into conflicts with people, or if you're having communication, you're feeling you should be having a better, or you want a better outcome, or you feel there should be a better outcome, and it's not happening. It's really when you start to look in and go, maybe it's me, maybe it's not this other person, but where is this coming from? And being honest with yourself. And it's not easy, and it can be scary to really start to look back at yourself. But once you start doing that, and you start kind of feeling better about yourself inside, and maybe realizing, um, that, there's some ego in there, and there's all sorts of a mix of things that can come out. But I think when you start focusing on other people at that point, and you start being a bit more compassionate for people, having compassion for people, and I feel there's so much judgment in the world right now. Everybody's judging everybody else. And, everybody, it's kind of like people are judging like they're perfect, and really nobody's perfect. Everyone's here to learn and grow. And I think part of successful mindful communication is working on your own communication, but it's also embracing other people, and helping them to see where they can grow, and supporting people, and also having compassion for people's shortcomings, whether people are angry or they're stressed or they're tired. Instead of kind of giving them a hard time over it, maybe look and say, well, look, my boss is working too many hours, he's stressed out, he's got family issues or this or that, and there's problems. And have some compassion, and if you start to communicate from that perspective, where you're kind of you know respecting people for their human self, for their inner self, from having compassion for where they're coming from, and what they're struggling from, it starts to make a huge difference. And you start to treat people better, and they also start to respond to you better, because people can feel that, when you're coming from a place of being genuine. And you have to put yourself down to do it, and it takes time. But the best communicators, um, they do that, and I think they've learned that. So again, whether it's your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whether it's the person at the Starbucks, um,
Yeah.
you're not just coming from a place of I'm just want what I want. I want to get my coffee and I want to get out of here as fast as possible. And I don't really care about this other person. And, they're being rude to me, or it's funny how people can create this whole scenario and it's really not personal. So maybe this person's having a bad day. It's not nothing about you. And you create this negativity and then it spreads on to the next person and the next person. And it just goes on throughout the day. So I think it's, when you start to communicate from a mindful standpoint, you start to work on yourself and you start to have compassion for others, it starts to spread out in your life. And, people start to react to you better, things start to fall into place, and things become a lot smoother. So this is definitely how it would help.
And I always ask my guests on the podcast for 3 top tips that they can share with the listener. Now, in your case, it's probably around mindful communication for happiness. And given that we've got the International Day of Happiness, it would be great to marry all of that together. So, what are your 3 top tips?
3 top tips. First would be to take some time to focus on your health and your wellness, like we've been talking about. So your foundation, whether that's to start a meditation practice, whether it's just to say, I'm going to start drinking better water, or I'm going to start, eating a little bit healthier, or eating more, or eating less, or whatever the fact is, or going out to taking the yoga class, or something like this. So making some changes in that area. Would be the first one. The second tip would be to start looking at your own communication.
Yes.
So start looking inwards to why you're communicating in certain ways, and be very honest with yourself. And if you think, just start a little bit. I mean, it grows. So you might just remember to do it once in a conversation, and then you might do it more and more. So start from there. While you're alone, think about things, and also when you're communicating with other people. And the third one would definitely be to start focusing on other people's communication. So while you're communicating with them, or after the communication is over, and maybe there's something you're still thinking about, or there was an issue, start thinking about why people are communicating the way they are. And maybe it's not about you, maybe it's about something else. And start to just become mindful of that, and create some space to just observe people and observe the communication on your end and on other people's.
Brilliant. What 3 great tips. And I'm sure everybody listening today, there are going to be some great takeouts from these tips from Edward. But before you go, and this is a fascinating interview, how could the listeners get in contact with you, or get the book, or organize a chat with you?
So basically, my book is available on all the major channels. You can definitely go to Amazon. I think most people love Amazon. So Amazon, I have an author page there, so you can find the book there. I will give you my an email address that you can post in the link to this podcast,
Okay.
so
Yes.
people can contact me if they have any questions. I also do offer some coaching with it can be personal, it can be corporate, anything in that area. So to deal with communication, or dealing with your own, or how to deal with other people, it can be conflicts, it can be any of that stuff. It can be just to achieve better goals, or to get your point across better with other people.
Oh, brilliant. So what I'll do is that I'll put that information in the notes for this particular podcast. Before we finish, is there anything else you'd like to add, Edward?
No, I think that's it, Susan. I think we covered the general basis. The book it is written in a simple way. It's quite a short book, so it's not something that it's going to take a month to read. I know people are busy. So there will be an audiobook coming out. It's not available yet, but I just want to tell people it is a quick read. There's a lot of information in there. It's quite packed in. But again, there's a lot of points, a lot of things to think about. It goes into a lot more detail on the stuff that we've talked about today on this podcast. And I think it's something that's really will help people during this time and moving into the future.
Brilliant. And what a great way to finish this, and to really think about International Day of Happiness, and how we can make other people around us happy with the way that we communicate.
Absolutely. And you know what? At the end of the day, when you make other people happy, you end up feeling happier yourself.
Definitely.
It's just the way it works. And I mean, happiness again is something that is based on external circumstances, and that's where we start, and we go from there. And if you get very happy, then you might just experience a lot of joy, which is like the ultimate thing I think that everybody wants at that stage.
Absolutely. And you've brought joy to my life today by being interviewed. So thank you very much, Edward.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on today.
Loads to go away with, aren't there? Lots to think about. And some of these things I hadn't thought about before. So I hope you have found this of huge value. Don't forget that you can leave a review on all of the platforms for podcasts, because it will really, really help me. And remember that you can also grab your Superstar Communicator checklist and also find out more about the webinars that I am going to be delivering, complimentary ones. All of the information is in the notes. So until next time, this is Susan from Superstar Communicator. You have been listening to the Superstar Communicator podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and review the podcast on iTunes and on apps. Please contact us if you want to discuss any topic, could suggest a topic for us to include, or a guest who could come onto the podcast. Go to superstarcommunicator.com.